Yeah, thanks everybody for coming to the second, third. Anyway, I can't. Why do I try? The nth seminar in the Digital Approaches series. This keeps happening. We have invited yet someone else who's a little hard to classify. Maksim is joining us from Bochum, where he's working on well, a really cool project that you're about to hear about. But he's a Russianist and also historian of philosophy and also historian of science. But who has been doing some really cool stuff in digital approaches in philosophy of science, about which I, at least, am really excited to hear a lot more. So let me go ahead and give you the floor, but without further ado, thanks for coming out.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. And I just jumped to the, without any ado, jump to the core of what I would like to present. So, and to show, and I'm like glad to show the article by Charles Spence that I just really read many times, because like 1 year ago I received the offer to write a small like overview about digital humanities in relationship to meta philosophy in German, and I started to think what is the relationship, and the Ben's article was very helpful, and what I'm trying to do, I try to do something else, something like beyond this article. And with my co-author, which I probably think that he was also here.
Yes, you should recognize the guy on the right there.
Yeah, so we wrote a small overview with the main idea that digital humanities methods can be used as a tool for unraveling bias. And because I also thought that maybe it's a common that people use bias, but what does it mean? And for me, it is very just like a good book written about just unconscious bias that usually people make. For example, we all committed to be like impartiality for like gender, but maybe still some of us will prefer like male colleagues over female, for example, and didn't even realize it. Yeah, so there is an unconscious bias, and for example, we are all willing to perceive a history of
Come back. Okay.
Yeah. For example, we all think that it is a good idea that all philosophers will have like equal chances to be published in prestigious journals, but then there is some like data that show us that actually like also like male authors will be more like overrepresent the females authors. And how can you spot these biases? Sometimes just unconscious bias, and that is what digital humanities are good for. And we think that actually exploring the history of philosophy or the contemporary states of philosophical inquiry, it is very useful for digital humanities, and this is one of the main tasks for digital humanities as a metaphilosophical studies. And one of the also like unconscious bias for digital humanities in philosophy itself is being oriented to English-speaking papers, because it's just easy to access, and this is like accessibility bias. It's easy to accept, it's present, and it's important, but what about some like local, or maybe not, maybe we couldn't say it local, but some less available data and area. And what I'm Yeah, and what I will show you, it is studying digital humanities on the case of German philosophy. And there's like my background. I have my PhD was like I was based for a long time in St. Petersburg, Russia. I wrote PhD on a post-Hegelian philosophy, trying to make some like sociological, in some terms, sociological study, like why philosophy was present and why philosophy was relevant to scientific inquiry in middle of the 19th century. And that is like the all stuff for what I will show you. It is like side down of this interest, side project of this interest. And my current project is experiment on soul, how philosopher in Russian Empire embraced experimental psychology. So go to, oops, yeah. I will present my two studies of German philosophy by using formal methods. And first, both, like I published like both paper with my co-author and formal colleague, but I have like more stuff, and I will tell you a little bit what I'm already published, but also what I'm willing to do in the future. So the study one, German textbook on the history of philosophy. It was in 19th century, it was a genre to publish a book on the history of philosophy in German-speaking tradition. And for the 19th century, it was published like almost 150 original works on the history of philosophy, which some of them was like multiple volume work, and so there was like really a small enterprise of German philosophers published and telling themselves or the future generation about like history of philosophy. And almost each such a volume or such a textbook was ended by like section contemporary philosophy. And I'm trying, and for me it was very interesting to see like what was the like self-description or self-representation of contemporary philosophy in these books. And because it was like a lot of such a books, we started to think like how can we summarize the content of these textbooks. And basically what we have done, we made a data set including like almost 100 books, and there is a table of content. And what we made basically data set from like names, what was mentioned in this table of context, and a number of pages for 19th century. So it was basically this section of contemporary philosophy. And so here is the textbook that we will took in our data set, and also you can see that some of them was repeatedly, like there was reprint or like reworked works, and it is interesting because you can see how some topics become more relevant or some topics started to be abandoned during the 19th century. And some textbooks was like really bestsellers because I think this was only for teaching purposes. This books was used. So, and what is the result? For example, so we call it attention, meaning that how many pages devoted to some particular philosophers. So we made this, of course, we made some adjustment of proportion, not in terms only papers, like pages, but in terms of proportion, like how much attention or how much text was devoted to one or another philosopher. And for example, here you can see like three, probably the most famous German philosophers besides Kant, Fichte, Hegel, Schelling, and it's present in 19th century in description of 19th century philosophy. And you may, for example, you may see that Schelling was, Fichte was already like very early mentioned in these textbooks, but not a Hegel. So Hegel come to these textbooks a little later. So already Schelling and Fichte was present. And then you see that in the middle of the 19th century, Hegel get like twice much attention as, let's say, Schelling, or Fichte, as Fichte. And then towards the end of the 19th century, the attention to all these guys actually declined. Which is very interesting because I think you may ask, like, what was the rest? Like, and there was a bunch of people who was inside of this like textbook, but we didn't know it. And it's interesting, like, why we still very anchored to these names, not to the others. And here is a Kant, Hegel and Herbert. I don't know if you know anything about Herbert. It is like somehow, in some context, he was very influential in pedagogy, like a philosophy of pedagogy. But usually, and he wrote actually the first, he was also important for psychological studies. He tried to make some mathematization of metaphysical psychological studies, and it was like this enterprise was absolute failure. But he was in some days he was pretty important. So actually, the German community, philosophical community in the 30s, was divided between two guys, Hegel and Herbert. And you can, I don't know if you can see from behind, but so there is like, here is a Herbert, here is a Hegel, and so there was some like battle between two schools. And it was usual that some textbooks was include Hegel, include Hegel but exclude Herbert. And some textbooks devoted Herbert as much, like present Herbert as a main German philosopher. But then this, like this group of philosophers, like Herbertianer, is like fallen down. And you can, actually I think it is my just suggestion, they moved from philosophy to pedagogy and have no interest to publish such a multiple volumes textbook on history of philosophy. So there was a present Hegel. You can also see that in the second half of the 19th century, Kant gained even more and more attention. It's always so, and towards to the end of 19th century, Kant is the main guy, which was not clear to this time. And both, you can see like the level, it is related to second. Here is a Hegel, and here is a Hegel, here is a Kant. So it's like how attention was switched to the Kant, and Hegel was not that popular at all. But Herbert started to be more popular. And it is why, because of psychology, he started regain popularity in context of psychological studies. And then I don't, like, it's all, like, my reflection of what I am doing. I do not use very sophisticated formal tools, but some tools, technically formal, can be very fruitful. So it is just like very basic stuff. So I try to find like the order between people, and usually it was present like from Kant to Hegel. And then for me was interesting to see where the Herbert, because there was actually in the same period of time. And there is like where Herbert was put, before Hegel or after Hegel, just writing down in two periods. So like this is the first half of 19th century and the second half of the 19th century. And like this is a date where this textbook was published. And you see the first half of the 20th century, Herbert before Hegel was mentioned 8 times compared to 4 times after Hegel. But in the second half of the 19th century, Herbert was almost always put after Hegel. So there is, I think for me, it is a clear I think from these facts we can conclude that it was like reframing of Herbert philosophy in the course of the 19th century. So there is in the paper there is some more stuff, but basically it's how you can work with canon formation and how you can rethink about canon studies by using formal methods. So another study is bibliometric analysis of German language philosophy in journals. It was a paper published in Scientometrics, and by making a review, like one of the reviewers said, yeah, this is not really advanced methods that you guys used. And I was like really afraid that it will be not published in this journal. But I wrote that, but it works. And for me, it is like I called this studies like not a big data, but middle-sized data. So and usually you need to pick some data by hand, which is very time-consuming. So what I would like to gain by study bibliometric analysis of the journal. So, but first of all, what do you think? How many journals in philosophy was published in Germany during the 18th and 19th century? Like, how many
early
titles?
Less than 10.
Less than 10?
Would expect a small 20 maybe?
Maybe 20? Yeah, it was 600. It is, I will, like, you may not believe me, I will tell you, like, because it's always, of course, if you think that 600, like, what does it mean to be journal in philosophy? And we will, like, see how we can deal with this problem to identify which journal is philosophical journal and which not. But just for what reason we need to study bibliometric analysis. First of all, a distribution of prestige, because it's like if you, and it's still interesting that it's still relevant to German academia today that to publish the paper in peer journal may be may also may have a secondary, how's it called? So the people are interested to publish books, not papers. So you may publish excessively in peer-reviewed journals, but at the end of the day, the like hiring commission will ask you about book. And in 19th century was the same. And for me, it's just also just a very like robust question. Why these people are willing to publish in journal? Like for what reason? Because it's not obvious. Because, okay, maybe not 600 journals, maybe it's too much, maybe you can reduce it for like, make some like adjustment, but it's still like 200 journal. You will be in safe place by saying it will be 200 journals, that it was 200 journals. So distribution, like the main driver to publish is to share your ideas with someone and to gain some attention, maybe to gain a prestige. A second is just like communicational channels across academic community, like read journals. And some also like developing a system of scholarly journals, because academic paper, it is not like as a genre, it's not taken for granted. And towards, I will focus mostly on 19th century. At the beginning of 19th century, the papers sometimes didn't look like we think should academic papers look like. And institutionalization of new research field. For example, psychology was a part of philosophy, and if you want to advertise, to establish new field, you usually, you need to found a new journal, and it may be not only for philosophy, but also like for not only for psychology, but also psychology and philosophy. Think about English journal Mind, which was also like somewhere in between. And intellectual coalitions and system of academic patronage. So now, so there is we made a 2 data set, and one, because I also started working with this project, I thought it will be like 20 journals. And then it's become a very messy and a very like problematic, like what journals can be counted as a philosophical. So I still have 15 journals and data set that some journals are digitalized, some digitalized in terms of scanning, not just like, you couldn't work with separate papers, but you have some Google Books mess by like just scanning copy, and we made a very time-consuming work, semi-automatic, to gain names of the authors, titles of the articles, type of the articles, meaning paper review, research paper review, some comments, and number of pages. So we have like this data set from these journals, and I think it is very like useful things if you want to if you want to know what even a famous philosopher published, you can easily go through this data set and see like almost his like bibliography. And so now, and for us, so my co-author actually have like degree in history of biology, and he has like formal education as a biologist, and we also like think in terms of like body population, like not in terms. We try to present like the whole variety of journals in philosophy, and we want to see. And we are using a lot of metaphors. Like basically, what we are interested in a lifespan of journals. When journals was born, how long did he live, and when he died. And to find some information, we suddenly, actually, by coincidence, find two selections of the journal, like two bibliography of journals in philosophy. And there are like two teams of researchers, and they have two different ways of to think which journal is philosophical, which not. And like this is breakdown of sources that we have. So we also like find some journals that didn't mention in these selections, but also just to think in periods, it helps you to understand intersection of the selections, and you can easily so you can easily work with definition of philosophical journals. You can say, oh, I would like to be inclusive. All journals are welcome. Let's say I don't want to be picky on which journals are philosophical, which not. For example, here, like this, the study of anthroposophical journals, so quasi like religious, psychological. It was very like trendy in this time, and I don't like. I would like to focus more in like scientific or academic understanding of philosophy. So I just exclude all journals that he mentioned in his base. Yeah, but you can like play around by justifying on your needs. The main things to get on the control some like border cases. And of course, and there's ideas that of course maybe this data set it is just approximation. Maybe it will be not like you can have a discussion about each journal, but if you think in terms of population, you have still a trends. And here is a trends. Here, like this line is German philosophy, this line is French philosophy, and this is British philosophy, philosophical journals. And you can see that in some terms pattern, let's say around this time, the French philosopher was more interested to publish journals in philosophy compared to Germans. And then the trend actually, there's a Second World War and there's a First World War. And you see the trends in somehow like similar, but except England. England, and it's very interesting that our data set just ended here, but you can imagine what happened here with this line and with this line. But it's my guessing. But interesting, like how, and for us it was also very. It was an interesting idea how First World War and Second World War affected the philosophical community. And working with such a big amount of journals, you can see, for example, for example, the recovery, the fast recovery after the First World War, and here is dramatically recovery. But you may ask, it was the same journals, or it was like newborn journals after some journals was died, and. But what I'm also interested, that's correspondent with my interest, like the German idealism, Schelling, sorry. Schelling has idea to run his own journal. He started I called it startups. So he made many attempts to publish journals, and all these journals was failed like after the second year. So the people, and Hegel was also involved to publish the journals. But at this time, like the heyday of German idealism was no journal at all. Like it was very little journals at this time. So, like whole idealism was on journals era. But at Kant time, yeah, in the Kant time, you can see like a lot of periodics at this time, and there is lifespan of each journal in chronological order. I was always interested in, like, if you suppose you are a student or like early career researcher, like at this time, and you need to publish some papers. Like how long this journal will stay, and so you can compare the chances of to be involved in a solid research collaboration. And maybe like it's just visualization, and I think it's more helpful visualization in terms of also like if you can see how long this journals was alive, and all the idea like why like 2 years, 3 years. But here you can see like one journal will stay like more as a 70 years. So and then like how people like why people at the first place why people like to start at journals, why they failed, and so forth. How many time do I have?
20 more minutes, so you're fine.
Okay. Yeah, and. Yeah, here's my like breakdown of my data set that I have, and it's also maybe I need like my idea how you can just understand what does it mean to run your journal. Usually you have some idea, some like research program, and you offer your research program to other people, and sometimes you failed. Like your research program is failed, and and what should you do? Maybe like you and your team will immigrate to another journal, and you can. I think the philosophy at this time, the German philosophy at this time, are not completely forgotten, but still not well researched. We still have this perception that it was like Hegel time. It was maybe backward to idealism, and there was a Kantianist movement. But if you can see the whole population of journals, you can see people with a wide interest, with very like marginal people, and especially for authors of this, like you can see like 3,000 authors participate and publish some papers. And if you want to see a minority in philosophical community in Germany, you can like just go around these people, and you will see, which is like for example, I was interested like how many people from Russian Empire was published, how many people from United States was published, how many women was published, which was not much, and so far. And for example, Jewish people, which was very interesting, and it's my suggestion, but because Jewish people in German, let's say in Russia, have not much chance to be a professor. So they need to discover an alternative academic tracks, or like alternative tracks that may be related to academia. So they was high educated. For example, many of very good redactor, like chief of journals was people with Jewish descent, which is very interesting. basically I want to retell the history of German philosophy, paying attention on journals. And because it's a lot of stuff that can be shown and shown the first time. And here is a journal that was the most successful journal in terms of lifespan. And he deliberately established this journal as a disciplinary journal. Like this journal will be cover all directions, all. This journal will represent philosophy as a subject in the university for public. And it was like the idea that like we will like make some, how's it called? So association. I think like in the United States it's very common that you have like association divided by the subjects, and they want to. And it's interesting that with the data you can answer the question, the most important question: did you succeed or not? So it is one thing you express in your editor column. So you have a lot of ambitions, but then like, do you really succeed or not? And for example, yeah, and I will see the result. And it's because we have also we have a deal with the whole population. You will be not distracted by some like bias or your ideas. And which is very interesting, this journal, this is Protestant journal, this journal was published alongside with the Catholic journals, also in philosophy. And you may see also like how philosophical journals in any confession was issued in this time. Oops. And now, because we know because we know the authors that was involved in journal production, and so we can make some networks analysis based on number of shared authors, and like there is a three-dimensional things, but you can see that some journals have more shared authors than another, and some journals have a very not much shared authors. So, for example, the Philosophische Studien, this journal by Wilhelm Wundt, so this is the first empirically oriented psychological journal. And you see that actually he was, the authors published here was actually, so the journal was very good embedded in a network of philosophical journals, not only psychological journals. But you can see that, for example, this Wundt people have less common with journal exactly philosophy, so it's also like journal oriented on empirical stuff. So, and they have a very different ideas what does it mean empirical stuff in philosophy. And so, and now going like deeper, how can we divide or how can we classify the journals? And I think it's the idea by my co-author to call this arena type and tribuna type. So basically, every prestigious contemporary peer-reviewed journal will be arena type. So meaning it is hard to be accepted. The journal want to accept. So there's a lot of people who want to be in this journal, and the journal want to make this like arena of some like best papers that can be published in this journal. So the people present their ideas and they just like try to persuade readers that they have the best idea. And arena type, it is something that, let's say, you have a brilliant idea how you can develop new field in philosophy. And no one else want to be published in your journal until your like closer friends and or subordinate. So, and you, because you need to issue these journals, so you published a lot by yourself. And so it's like tribune. And now you can just having a number of pages and number of papers, you can feel, you can see like where, like what people was dominant in each journal. And for example, what do you think? Is it Tribuna type or is it arena type?
Tribune for the guys, for the two guys on the top, or
yeah, so it's Tribuna type. Yeah, I think I also think so, because we have like two main editor, but they have but it's like something in between, because you can see like we have at least two guys, not the only one, and you have also some like secondary authors. So you can see, even if this Stein Ludwig and Eduard Seller published a lot, they have some like friends that also published, maybe not so much, but still a reasonable part. And here's like some occasional authors. Just a minute, I would like just, and here is a philosophical student by Wilhelm Wundt. And then you can see like how hard was was run psychological research. So, and it is exactly like Tribune type ideas, like, and it's the situation changed after his death actually. So it's interesting, like this formal methods in digital analysis can you going back and forth in time by seeing what was a faith of the journals. And here's the journals that I show, like the redactor column I show you, and that try to be the journal of philosophical association. And it's also, you can see that also one guy published in Immense. There was like secondary guys, but then actually that was not much. So it is like I can interpret it, and I find very interesting genre to redactor column, because redactor column try to frame the philosophy or the enterprise in terms of like what we try to achieve, what we try to do, and so forth, and like try to represent the philosophy. And here, this Fichte, so the son of the famous Fichte, he was, yeah, like if you Fichte, you. What's the name you give your son? So, meine kleine Emanuel. So, and this guy was also like important for reasonable time in Germany, completely forgot. And he tried to make this journal inclusive, but he failed. So actually, not many people wanted to be published in this journal in the course of 19th century. It changed after at the beginning of 20th century, and he was in a very complicated rivalry to Hegelian, like to Hegelianer, and he also like once he offered his journal to Hegelianer from Berlin, and it was like clearly interesting move how they try to run this business. And here is a Kant Studien. This journal existed still, and you can see a pretty arena type journal. You may have some like champions, but still you can see that no one prevailed here. Now, yeah, and top productive authors in the time. And it's also interesting, like, who was dominate academic field in philosophy in some during the 19th century. And like Wilhelm Dilthey, probably like also famous philosopher, you can see that he was published. It's very interesting because he was a professor at this time. He didn't strive anything in academic career, but they started to publish like a lot. And then it's also, I think it's a good like clue that it's something going on here, like why these people want to be published. Oops. Yeah, this is Ludwig Stein. So he ran a free journals actually. He was very important guy. He has like this Jewish descent. He was an important guy. We can also see that he published a lot. Not only like a successful entrepreneur in terms of making some like space for publication, but also publish themselves. So you can see a lot of names that you usually didn't see any in other case. Here is, I know that probably you guys are very like will not impressed by word cloud, but I think it's like heuristically interesting. There is just names of words from the titles, and what can you like? How can you interpret this? Like there's two different journals. So the first of all, like psychology, philosophy. So even this journal called Zeitschrift für Philosophie und Pädagogik, so Journal of Philosophy and Pedagogy. It's exactly like Herbert people. So they always they told a lot about psychology and Herbert, and these people told a little bit about Kant. But what is striking is this this word translated as like about, like on something, and you can we didn't make this like stop words. Yeah? So here you couldn't see any such word. So it's like the type of naming like on Kant, on a free will, on something, and these people have no such idea that each paper should start with this word like on something. So you can see that the style of naming is different, and it's maybe a good idea to, for example, another the Naturphilosophie also like Uber, like on harmony, on theory. Kant Studien have no such idea, just like Kant critique. So I think it's also it is not enough. Yeah? You can use this word cloud only like as a heuristic tool, only like a tool to go deeper. And I almost just like some summarizing. So we can study the whole population of philosophers without any any initial ideas. And we can also study not just the successful ones, but also who failed. And I think this is the most interesting, like how many people have some ideas and these ideas just vanished. So we can focus on little known figures. We can better understand the policy of journals editors, because you can see, I think in 19th century there was no idea peer review on peer review process. There was only like connections, and you can also, and I think it's give you some ideas where was dependent on or connected to one. And yeah, this is a division and coalition, and I think, like, for example, it is interesting to see how psychology was, like, there is some, like, I think it's, there is a, like, classic story that philosophy and psychology was experienced like happy divorce. Like the psychology was like go away from philosophy, emancipate themselves. But actually, if you will see, like, actually where was embedded, like in which coalition was people embedded, you will see a much more messy story. And the last slide is just funny how look the philosophical journals. So there is a like journal for nature and culture philosophy. Some landscape, nice landscape, but Logica, like Ludwig Wittgenstein and his like revolution in philosophy, and by publishing this Tractatus Logica Philosophicus, was actually not a book at the first place. It was logisch-philosophische Abhandlung. Abhandlung is like the paper. So, and it was published in this journal, and it is so it's the first. It was existed as a paper, actually maybe a little like white paper, and also like paper was prephrased by editor, but still there are some ideas that you need to be published because at least I have like this story, like someone told the story that like if Wittgenstein would like to attempt PhD, you couldn't publish, like your PhD couldn't look like paper of Wittgenstein, yeah? But it's still like, no, Wittgenstein published the paper. So, so thank you very much, and I would like to, to answer your question or comment or critics. Yeah, thank you for that.
Standard operating procedure, 5-minute break, so you can catch your breath.
Okay.
Everybody can get water, restrooms, coffee, etc. Okay, we are back. Are there questions? I will be happy to hear them. Yeah, Kevin.
Yeah, question of curiosity, several things for the talk. A question of curiosity for the data you showed about the relevance of Kant, Hegel, and so on in the 19th century. I noticed a curious correlation because the renewal of Hegel in the textbook is in the middle of the 19th century, if I remember correctly, and it's at the same time as the rise of Marx and Marxism and of this Hegelian Marxism stuff. And I wonder if there is a correlation, or more than a correlation, there is some kind of causal explanation that you can advance on the fact that at some point there is renewal of Hegel, and then the disappearance in the philosophy textbooks is like Hegel going from a philosopher to a philosopher for political theorist or something like that. Is there some kind of explanation here that you can advance?
Yeah, I think like the like German textbook view on like contemporary philosophy was first of all very like German focused. For example, there was like now contemporary philosophy, like how many non-German philosophers are mentioned in like all these books, like all these 200 books in a section of like contemporary philosophy. Just like maybe few, just Mill like twice, and that's it. So you can just like very German focused, and second very like academical focus. So Marx was mentioned like the same as a Mill, like maybe twice. So it was not at all. It was like completely different door, and it's interesting. Like when Marx entered in this book, in the textbooks in philosophy, I have no answer because it's not my period. But I think it's also you can see like the major changes in understanding of philosophy, and when like Marx will be present, like as a Marx will be present, and it will be, I think, in the 20s only, in 19th century, in 20th century. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
If I'm not mistaken, the first modern university with PhD program is in Germany, 19th century, before United States and before. Because the program were different. This university didn't have a PhD program with producing new result until 20th century, I think. So is there an influence between journals, the number of journals produced? Because now you have to get a PhD and now you have to publish somewhere. And
yeah, I think I can only guessing because I think there was a link, like PhD in German case was always about book. So it's not about papers. Like cumulative defense is still a big deal in Germany right now. But I think you published a book, like your PhD. It is obligatory, but then you are on the market, and you will be called a private docent. So you need to earn money by self. And in some cases, you have no chance to be a professor, so that a professor will be paid by government. Mm-hmm. So, and then you can this like precarious positions that you can offer any course you want if you find someone who will pay you for this course. And I think publishing in the journal was. Exactly about like to establish your own reputation. That I think that was the main driver, like why people want to publish, or why people want to run the journal like by itself. And I saw that some editors have like it was like a deliberate strategy, like you can offer a university. You as a teacher, but you also as a redactor, and it will be like count. So I think that is why people started to publish, but then it was also like readership, like who were the people who will read it, And one things, first of all, if you have a major journal, it is a profitable things actually, because you can sell it to, let's say, Russia or to other university library. I think it was like the main source of income. Some journals was trying to, also you can see like trying to sell it to students, because I think the most like the readership of the textbooks was exactly like, and it was a profitable business for people who publish this textbook in philosophy of some, like in the history of philosophy, selling it to student, and then gain some like national wide attention and sell it like in a big number, and it will be like a good part of your income. So there is also the idea the journals to be like, some journal was trying to be more accessible to general readership. And I think it's also important like how people try to advertise their philosophy not as just like small academic project that like you care about your career, but you care about like truth, and then you publish such a journals.
Can I?
Yeah.
Because one of the graphs that is really troubling is the number of journal compared to French journal and English journal. So I was looking for the cause. Is it the university system? Is it the culture in general? Is it the number of readers? Where it's coming this difference? So maybe it's the system, it's the university system in Germany?
I think it's just maybe I think like at least so we can speak on the difference started only here. It's interesting like why, and you can see that like French and German periodics actually behave in the same way. Because I used as a source, I use a German collection of German selection of journals. Maybe if it will be someone who are more willing to show how important French philosophy is, maybe the number will be a little higher. I think the dynamics will be the same, but maybe it's just like effect of the data set. But generally, like we started because it's like more like technical things. We tried to find some coefficient, the speed of changes the whole body of journal, of names, of titles. Like for example,
like turnover rate or something.
Turnover rate.
Interesting. Okay.
It is also like from biology, like how like species will be. And it's all in the paper. I just didn't refresh my memory, like how it. What was the thing? But we tried to understand it was like the same journal or not. And actually it was another journals. And then, so you can see, like, if you have a reasonable number of population and it will be changed, the titles, so the population itself will be changed, but the numbers will still be pretty stable, you might conclude that it is such an amount of, like, readership, not only just the people who are willing to publish, but people who are willing to buy in some circumstances at least. And it is also interesting that actually the Hitler come to power somewhere here, but you can see the number of journals still decline. So the trend, it's not because of like the German politics, but something else. And the crises, this in Weimar Republic, so there is the inflation, and so it's somewhere here. But still, even if you have like a very big financial trouble, you still publish journals. And I think in these times the philosophy was so present because they was involved in politics. So you can it's also important for our understanding of what German philosophy is, because I think, for example, the rise of Hegelianism in 20th century, it's all was in politics involved, and this involvement in politics, so that I think the people, the such amount of journals was like unhealthy. And because it was so heated by people who try to catch attention of educated public.
I want to piggyback on the same question because although I'm gonna do something mean and I'm gonna ask you to talk about a part that's not your period. What did you learn about this 1685 to 1835 period in the German context? All those first 200 years, because, like, for example, I'm looking at the graph, I can tell you with I think 100% certainty, the francophone line starts at 1665 on purpose, and from 1665 till 1800, that is just the Journée savante.
Exactly.
Period, right? We know what that is. There weren't journals. It's so famous that it has, we all know that's what that line is. So I'm actually kind of shocked to see this thing super high in Germany, where I feel like I haven't read any secondary literature. What were these things? I mean, were they really journals in the modern sense? Were they something else?
It was first of all, thank you for your question. Second, I'm not sure that my answer will be.
I know. I'm making you speculate. But.
Yeah, because it was my sense. It was some journals was it was philosophy in a title, but it was not a philosophy in terms of academic discipline, but philosophy of curiosity of the of life and something, and it was here it is what I saw. I was more in this period. It was most of this journal was actually somewhere between manifest actually. So the people tried to publish. It is just only 1 year journal. It is basically you have not much time and resources to publish the book, and then you try to slice this book by a chapter and present as a journal, and because usually it's one or two author, or maybe it's also some papers are anonymous papers.
Sure.
Or some papers have another name, but the author is the same. And this exactly was how Hegel and Nietheimer, so some guys published this, let's say, philosophical journal. They try to why you need to change your name, because you want to see that you are crowd. But it is you need to adjust your understanding on what a journal is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the graph is a little bit misleading. In the paper, I just telling that you need to have some caveat in order to understand, because most interesting things that actually the rise of the journals, here, for example, my guess was that the journal started here, the massive production of journals started here. But actually it was later on the number of journals rise. But the main journals was, because if you try, so weird that it's so, oops. don't know why it's so slow. I couldn't.
That's funny. It did okay through the talk, and now I got angry at the questions.
Yeah. Okay, but basically you usually know for example, like this selection, like why I choose this journals, because it's accessible, second I know these journals, but it's like correlated because you usually journal accessible is some important journals, and some of the journals started in 60s, for example, like here and here. So you can see that some enterprise like started to something started to happen in 70s, in 60s, and then after German-French war, it is like booming. Boomed.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm just curious. Do we know something about which areas of philosophy were covered throughout this period? Do we see like the same more or less picture? Or we see like here we have like growth of political philosophy or something, or growth of just metaphysics or something. Because what you said now, for example, that there is this boom after Franco-Prussian War, and then given this idea of a university which should construct somehow the nation, etc. Maybe there was this boom, maybe explained by the rise of maybe writings in political philosophy or in something like anthropology or this kind of stuff, or.
Yeah, that's a good question. For example, you can see philosophy and pedagogy. Yeah. So it's most because manual journal was more attached to university to university life, and through the university life to politics. Because if you have like expansion, like what was like after the German-French war, they, for example, the university in Strasbourg, so they also tried to rebuild the university in some national-wide network. And so it's not political per se, but it's like how this agenda works. But you can in the middle in the 30s there was important things theology and philosophy, the relationship. Then it was physiology und Sinnorgan. So this is more like psychological journal, and it's here only because it was very accessible, and I want to see how many authors they have, like shared authors they have. But most of them it was like systematische, spekulative, Naturphilosophie, which is realismus, which didn't give you exact understanding what was it about. But they have, but of course they have understanding, and the idea it was like rivalry between different understanding of philosophy. What should philosophy doing, and so it was, for example, the rise of sociology was also through these journals. You can see that some journal was renamed, for example, Archive for systematic philosophy, and later on, and sociology. And it was also, we have some like graph how when journals was renamed, because it was also like a domino effect, that some days it was like all journal was renamed, aiding like psychology or sociology, and it's called historization of philosophy. That maybe is still German very famous for, like, you shouldn't just like work with a philosophical problem, but you need to show us how it was in the past, and that's why also one journal who's still alive is a journal of history of philosophy. So it was like also like Kant Studien. It's also somehow like you shouldn't directly discuss philosophical problem. You need to be engaged in some historical context, and this like trend you can easily trace also even on thematical journals. I think
Thank you.
I have a related and just kind of technical question, because I think I don't think I caught this on my phone. So the data set for these is just the metadata of all the articles. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Was that a German library initiative to go back and
No, it was.
because I imagine some of these, as you said, were like weird little things that
Yeah. Yeah, it is unfortunately, it's like my initiative being in St. Petersburg and have only like it is unfunded. It is also I don't like maybe it's one of the option of my like what I would like to do next, and maybe to collaborate with some like German scholars and to make some like normal funded like initiative to to make things in the right way, because I also like I found some for example in Google book you can, or in some other archive you can find some journals, and we made like OCR, and my co-author wrote a script who can make it in the right order. So it was like semi-automatic. So, but you need to because some journals was written in yeah. So it's it's hard to read by anyone. But yeah. So I think like you need to like I hope maybe German Philosophical Society are willing to fund such an initiative.
Yeah, I was curious about the institutionalization of a new research field, because there's a lot of turnovers of journals. Today, I don't know really much. So is it most of the time someone does it trying to found something else, or there's other reasons?
Yeah, I think it was exactly how like this classical story about Wilhelm Wundt, that they want to make psychology, because psychology wasn't a thing. He called his journal philosophical studies, meaning like real philosophy is psychology. And many journals was also behind like some like realism, like philosophical realism. It was meaning that now it will be a new truth bear philosophy, and it's like our understanding of philosophy. And this journal lasted like 3 years and then died. So it was, and I think it's interesting also in terms of like maybe it was just like in terms of evolutionary biology, like you
The
make
dynamic of
dynamics that you have some like some initiative, and if it survives, it's fit on. Yeah, so.
And out of the 607 journals, how many are still published today?
Not much. Okay. It is maybe. so I need, yeah. So I tried to trace any, like, all journals that was published in, like, in this year and still alive. Some of these journals are still alive, not many. But what is the most striking thing to me was some of these journals are so provincial, like, not, there's like dying, and there's some, like, you can see this even not, like, I definitely will not call it like preview journal. It was like maybe there's some journal are still alive, but there's maybe I am wrong, but in some cases it will be like private initiative to run such, and this doesn't seem to me like a proper journal. And this is like how I think the story behind this is switching, because what I like with this project is the German philosophy of 19th, like the German journals of 19th century is a ended story. So you can see what was like initial phase, initial stage, what was like what was the ambitions, and all things are still in a core theme, so you can easily do this and learn for this like after mortal case. What going right now, I think it's also like some periods that will be not lasted forever, yes? And I think like now German English language is the most dominant one. The role of Web of Science, and so the big libraries in journals that they like keep it, and also try to invent some very formal procedure for preview, which was not also like I consulted with some how was it called, established professor from like 70s, and so like I don't want to say like old generation, especially in video, but like some people who was more active in the past and involved in the decision of publishing, and they told that they have no this like peer review process, like such in a such formal way. And I think it's like how technology drive academic the communication between in the community, and it's the relationship between like national market and international market also makes some dramatical transformation, which is also not clear what is effect will give us. And it's also clear that some study in digital humanities, in journal, in philosophy, it's also like you work with a data set that already is there in English, and what happened with some like local communities who preserve their own language, will they just in indigenous, or they like how's it working? So I have another project about Russian journals of 19th century and after revolution, like the immigrant journals, also like to see like this networking, like how many authors that was active before revolution was active after revolution in Soviet Russia. It's like 5, like no, maybe 5%. So it is like dramatic change, and then all like it is a very interesting, but it's also like history. It is like how we can learn from the history in order to understand what's happened right now with this journal production. Like to find some analytical language, like how can we describe what's going on in terms of how it will affect. Yeah, I don't know in Belgium what should you, in which language should you publish in order to be successful in academia.
Depends on which
community.
But
or-
we have a journal that is still published from 19th century. But so what you're saying is that these journals like mine can study Revue Philosophique de l'Oeil, more than 100 years, are extremely rare. So for me, there's a historical mystery there. Why there's such a old journals? Journal of Philosophy is in the United States very old. So why? There's something in the structure or the way they work or they associate they have money.
Why is they still alive?
Yeah, because of course philosophy in 19th century and today is very different in the way we write, we publish, and you're absolutely right. It depends on the research structure. But still there's these few journals that survive.
There's also the phenomenon of reanimating dead journals.
Well, that's true.
So like
Yeah.
Mind dies and comes back. Kannstudien dies.
Yeah.
I saw on your thing, I was like,
Yeah.
because you said Kannstudien, it stops publishing in like 1935.
Okay.
Maybe that was just the
Yes.
war. But, they start again.
Yeah, and in some cases it was just like the same people, or some of them the same, or in some cases it's just completely different people. But I think it's also it's called like survival bias. So because we know the journal who survived because they survived, and I don't know which journals. Like what Mind at the beginning and Mind like right now, I think it's interesting to see, and it's always like how they, what's the role? Maybe the role is changing, but it's still like, I think it's interesting to see what journal was have such a reputation as Mind but died, and why.
I have a question on this idea why did philosophers at the time publish in journals? And you said that it was not that prestigious as to publish a book, but still they strive to get some sort of credit for their work. And I was just thinking, how did it work in the sense that it was just the way for them to be more sort of famous and well known just because they publish and people can read the journal and see their name and just know about them, and if they're good they know that they're good, or there was something closer to contemporary situation where we have this idea of prestigious journal and just the fact that you have published in, I don't know, Mind or in Kannstudien, if you study Kant, it already means that you will be, even if you don't read the article, there will be immediate bias to consider you as at least in some sort of a professional.
Yeah, I think the question is clear, very interesting. The problem is like how can you find the answer, reliable answer, and because it's always like question on intention and what. I think you can have some ideas how can you deal with this problem. I think you need to zoom, but because I think for different people this publication will have a different meaning. For some, like for example, in regard of Russian context in this time, it was of course prestigious to publish. Like maybe it was someone who went for training in Germany, and then like after 10 years he published in journal of his supervisor, just to showing how well he developed, because it was no institutional driven motivation to publish outside of, for example, Russia, and you will not impress someone it's this time in Russia that you published in German journal. For some people it's like, so what? And it's interesting, like Americans who was also traveling to Germany to study. Why? Like at least I think like there is also it was very interesting to find Americans who published in German in 19th century in philosophical journals, and to trace what was their motivation. So maybe it's like for different people from different contexts, you'll have and women, of course. I think it's very interesting to see women publishing in 19th century journals.
Yeah.
Can you say a bit more about the few publications by women that you had in your database? So you said there were very few.
Yeah, I think I need money to answer this question. I really want to go deeper. I think it's very interesting topic, but I see it will be just the cases. So it will be not much, but so. Simply answer, I don't know. I wish to know more, and I think it's able. So the data is already there. So I need to just to identify maybe machine-wise method, like what is a woman, what is a male, and just to see each person, which is another topic, but I participated in one conference, like Women in Russian Philosophy, and I found two women who was active as philosophers in Russian, late Empire Russia, and there was not only just two women, but they lived together. So and this is maybe why they was able to be active as scholars, because there was upper class persons, and usually for this time, if you a woman from upper class, you will marry another maybe philosopher and give up your own enterprise in academia. But if you have two women in one family or household, they try to and interesting, there was they have a very conservative views.
Upper class is stronger. Class is stronger than gender.
Stronger than love.
I have one more. So, yeah. It's a hard question, or it's a hard problem, but I'm sure it's one that you've thought about. So I'm just wondering. I'm wondering what your thoughts are. One thing. So first of all, just for curiosity, so the percentages, when you were showing the fractions in the textbooks, that was the fraction of the contemporary philosophy section.
Yeah, if usually not every textbook has a section, but
right.
You can guessing that the final section.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. And you thought about trying to do kind of thematic analysis to try to understand what topics were important in those textbooks? Do you have the data that you would need? What do you have the full text of all of those? Or were you working with tables of contents?
Yeah, I think for me it was easier to work with a table of contents, because it was I was driven by my interest. I saw many table of contents, and I tried to how can I summarize like the description of like contemporary philosophy at the time.
Sure.
And then I think because at the beginning I started, I have like formal philosophical education, and at the beginning I started to try to describe and then I feel like it doesn't work at all. It's just like a bunch of words just like repeatedly, and I try to find some variables that you can easily work with.
Sure. So yeah, something to summarize with.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. That's really cool because that sort of shows. That's a cool conclusion to be able to draw just from the metadata. Actually, that's really neat. I haven't thought about how useful tables of contents could be, especially if they're good.
But it depends on is the manual driven by philosopher or by teams? Depends how it's structured.
It is, but it's this time it is a structure very like person
Around
focus.
around people.
Yeah, and people, and usually the people just like there is a person, and it is a very like German way of understanding how like things are running. Like there is a guy, and this guy need to have some sort of system, and this system need to cover like all area of philosophy, and then just it's like epistemology, like ethics, and so forth.
So in that case, the table of content is very efficient
yeah.
to get that information.
And it's also like a signal. Like if you put some name on a table content that meaning that is important, and the names usually it's also like give you a clue what is thematic is about, and that's how like later to the 19th century while psychologists started to be present, they started to find some history of psychology, which is all like history of logic, history of psychology, like all need to be written in a historical way. And then there was they put some persons from the beginning of the 19th century and put in the middle of the new area like psychology.
One more question that's related, and it sort of ties back to this the sort of happy divorce hypothesis, but it's more general than that though, because one thing that I think is interesting that you see in some of those journal titles that you showed is so it's not just that, how to put it, psychology is not the only science that some of these subjects would later flee to. Right? So like I'm thinking about, based on some of those journal titles, I've got to imagine that you have people in, I don't know, a Helmholtz tradition of like physiology, right? And those are philosophical for a while, but like at some point they quit being philosophical. And I wonder how it's an interesting challenge to kind of trace that, because, it makes sense. It'll be, at least if if your only target is tracing people running away to philosophy, to psychology, then you kind of know you got that's the. But in some of these cases, they're going to run to physics, they're going to run to medicine, they're going to go to maybe chemistry. Ostwald is thought of as a chemist now. It's really interesting. I kind of wonder. It's got to be weird. I wonder if I guess maybe the right way to phrase this is a good question is to say, did you see any kind of weird signals in your data of that kind of process?
Yeah, I think it is actually it's interesting. It can be very interesting. You can find some like journals in physiology or let's say life science. Yeah. So you can find some life science journals, and you can see like the authors of the journals, and then you can run this name in my data set, and in order to find someone who, if there was a cases that someone published, let's say normally in the life science journals, but still have some weird idea to publish in philosophical journals. Then you will see some journals that is more willing to publish such a persons, and then maybe so it is a first of all. The second, maybe you need to find some words like some that will be signaling that this is about life science topics, and then also like try to work it with these things, like because I think this disciplinary divorces or divisions or intersections very interesting to like to understand how it worked in the 19th century. But if you have idea,
Yeah, that's tough. Well, that's a really hard problem.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much.